Hello, good morning to you all, and welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning. I am Chamberlain Uso.
Yes, it's the day after the big tribunal judgment. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
Good morning, I'm Ayo. Good morning. Today is September 7. It's a Thursday morning. Welcome to the program. Okay, I lost you guys for a bit. Well, yes, indeed, it is. What a time it is, and boy, goodness, so many things just played out yesterday, from court judgment to the labor strike to TUC not participating in that strike. So it was a mixed bag. Many didn't exactly know what to expect, and it turned out that way because look at that, the judgment taking the whole day. Who would have thought it would take that long? And we'll focus on that too. And then the processes, goodness, it was challenging. But here we are today. But we'll talk about that as we progress here. But what I found about this protest by the NLC is that, they were asking for several things from the government, saying, look, our demands must be met. Government is not serious. That's why we backed out of that negotiation with them, even though our law says, yeah, we could pull out of the strike even at the last minute. We could also negotiate with them at the last minute. The Minister of Labour did try what he could, but couldn't get them to sheath the sword. So the two-day strike ended, and Labour releasing a statement congratulating the unions and their affiliates for participating in that strike, which they say was successful. And they also went ahead and spoke about fifth columnists. So of course, when you see that kind of statement, it casts your mind wide to various angles, and you wonder, so now, is there a crack between them now, between NLC, TUC, or is just a disagreement in principle, and they could always get back and continue the fight on common ground, insofar as the people will be, or the labor workers, or labor, as it were, could be the uniting factor. But as I was saying, what I noticed yesterday, going home at night, is in several places you went through, you could see that the power was out in some parts of town, and the persons who thought Labour was fighting for now had to be forced to get the jerry cans or whatever facility they wanted or they had to go buy fuel in some areas, 617 naira per litre, which you're trying to save them from. So it just goes on. And then on the other hand, many looking to see the palliatives that the state governments are supposed to get down to the people. Much as, yes, lots of fanfare in the distribution, we've always wondered, what's the platform? Can they say they've got a credible, a durable, reliable platform upon which they could actually say, yes, we have this, we can distribute this based on this document, everybody can see it? I don't know. I don't know how many of you have seen them publish any document or database with which you can check and be sure that this is an authentic data or authentic list, or whatever it is you call it. So that remains there as well. In addition to that, guys, even after all of this, they distribute all the palliatives, and then they're going to eat, they'll feed, and then they exhaust it in what? 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks max, and it's gone. It's still 670 naira per litre. So how do they get on from there afterwards? So there's a lot of questions and challenges in terms of how all of this will play out, because if they don't improve their purchasing power, how will what they feed within a month help? Just wondering. For that moment it may, but what about in the long run? I don't know, guys, but so many questions here. But yesterday is still weighing in the minds of a lot of people, and part of what we'll focus on largely here today. Guys, go ahead.
Chamberlain, and we had cause to ask yesterday about, the timing of the strike. I remember Nyota asking that specifically, and perhaps it's in response to that the statement by the president of the NLC, which he put out to encourage workers to return to work today, he talked about fifth columnists, as you have rightly said, and here's what he says. Congress is not unmindful of the actions of detractors and fifth columnists, but in the face of them all, we remain undaunted and more committed to the defense of Nigerian workers and people at any given time. Our nation deserves better. So if there's partial compliance with this two-day warning strike in states of the Federation, it appears as if the cracking a wall is not just at the federal level, but is also in some states of the Federation, because, you know, the strike has been recorded to be successful in some states and not in other states. So what are the reasons therein responsible for this seeming division? Is it because the palliatives distribution has been effective in some states and it hasn't been effective in some states? Of course, we've seen how in some states, you know, you'll find people queuing up to receive bags of rice, but in other states, what we've seen are more of rations, you know, so to speak. But the heart of the matter really is the long list of demands of labor at the start of negotiations. You know, that's at the onset of this administration, which included, just to mention a few, a return to status quo. That's what the price of petrol was before that big bomb announcement that fuel subsidy is gone. And of course, you know, to ensure that government ensures that the refineries begin to work. So what happened to all of that, particularly with the TUC? Why is the TUC not pushing, you know, for that as well? And the long-term consequences on that for, you know, labor in the future, because the reality is that the factors that influence the price of petrol, they remain, and, you know, they could be upon us at any time because of, you know, the challenge of Forex. And what if the fuel price goes up yet again? So that means labor is not united to present a single front with government in the negotiations. Those are big, huge consequences. And, you know, as you rightly noted, you know, the consequences of the price adjustment of petrol, they do not wait. Nigerians are still buying petrol at 630 naira per litre, regardless of the palliatives that are being distributed at this time. Those are the issues, really, that labor should reflect on. Ayo.
You know, for me, as far as I'm concerned, the most important thing here is follow the money. Let's begin from there. Because government will do what government does, politicians will do what politicians do, but what do we people do? Let us follow the money. A good number of civil society organizations have advised on how we can get around to doing that, to ensuring that the promises that government made and the allocations that governments at various levels have received are actually spent in the way it is supposed to be spent, disbursed the way it is supposed to be disbursed. I'm sure you guys will remember not a few times that we asked the question over and over again, how will these palliatives get to the people? We've also had a conversation with the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, who also said, look, we're trying to work on the register to ensure that the people who really need to get these interventions of government are the ones that actually get it. But now that the register is not ready, and then the disbursements have begun, both in cash and kind, how are they being distributed? I will not forget in a hurry what one newspaper, I'm not sure, I'm not very sure, I think it was Nigerian News Director, which one of them, or maybe it was even the Abuja Inquirer, that was pointing at the Adamawa state government and the issues a number of people in that state are raising about what the government of the state in Adamawa was doing with that distribution, packaging it in the name of political, in some political guise, that look, this is what our party is doing, or this is what our candidate is doing, this is what the governor is doing, and all of those things. That isn't what the intention is. But whichever way it is, let us follow the money. Well, let's also not forget that the impact of the strike has begun. In some states, I mean, you mentioned it, Bukola, you know, the reality is right there in the faces of people. Chamberlain, you were talking about the cost of the cost of fuel, and how that out of pocket money is dwindling by the day. You're very correct, but that is not the only thing. Yesterday, it was supposed to be day 2 of the NLC strike, and officials at Unilag, for instance, were on duty. Why was there a protest by the students who found out that, okay, school fees had been hiked, and some officials of the university were on duty? Were they not also supposed to be on part of the warning strike? There was a fire outbreak yesterday at I think it's the Lagos airport. So were those people also not supposed to be on strike? So some of these issues need to be explored so that we know exactly what is happening. But for me, I would say let there be communication with the people. Dumping information on people is not going to give us the desired result. It is not going to help people feel like they are being carried along in any way, manner, shape, or form. Let us communicate with the people. Dumping information is not communicating. You can give people information and they will take it whichever way they want. Let us ensure that not only do we pass out the information, but we get their feedback to get their buying of the issue. Otherwise, we're still going to be talking about the same thing over and over again. But then the message of the strike, the 2-day warning strike, I hope that the federal government has got the memo. Chamberlain.
Well, concerning those who you said were supposed to be on strike and they were work, well, look, I don't think if they break or broke any law by choosing to be at work when they're supposed to be on strike. I mean, who knows? They might have been members of TUC. You never can tell how some of these things work. But interesting point you guys made there. But also, don't forget, the reason why TUC pulled out, because TUC president had met with the Minister of Labour, and then he there says, look, we'll give government 2 weeks grace, particularly because the president is out of the country at the moment. The demand will be tabled before FEC, when FEC meets next week, so they will see how they decide or what happens thereafter. So you then ask yourself, okay, so after this 2-day warning strike, will there be what happens after the 2 weeks? So it will be very, very interesting times. But it does appear as though they may have 2 different perspectives, both the NLC and the TUC. If the TUC feels, no, we're not satisfied with what you've done so far, FG, so we will take our own action. Or NLC says, look, we just came out of 2-day warning strike. Are they going to embark on another one in 2 weeks? What will it be? So that's where you just wonder how all of those things will happen. So it will be, of course, definitely keeping our tabs on that one. So guys, yes, let's go ahead and take you through some of the dailies. And of course, it's going to be about the judgment that was handed down yesterday. Wow, what a day it was as well. All day. They specifically took their time, broke down some things which we'll ask some lawyers who have been at least in the know, who should know of all of these things in a moment. But let's start with the Guardian newspaper. They lead with Tribunal affirms Tinubu's victory, dismisses petitions as the lead one here. So, and there's a quote as well. Having considered that all the 3 petitions are devoid of merit, I hereby dismiss all the petitions. I affirmed the declaration by INEC that Ahmed Bola Tinubu is duly elected president of Nigeria. So that is a quote. They didn't tell us which of the judgment, but that's the quote of the judgment basically. And you can see several other stories related to this one here this morning. So there you go, guys. That is Vanguard here this morning. I beg your pardon, the Guardian today. Still booting actually.
Yeah. This Nigeria takes the same breath and tone. It goes with the tribunal verdict. And here's how the big story is captioned. Verdict, no case. Tribunal strikes out Atiku Obi's suits against Tinubu, says they are generic, nebulous, and lack merit. Labour Party rejects judgment. Of course, that's the immediate reaction of the LP to the tribunal's verdict. Look at it. Judgment at a glance. There's a recap, of the submissions of the justices on the many petitions brought before it. Shettima eligible to contest, 25% votes in FCT, not compulsory to become president. Of course, that provides the much needed clarity on that long debate, from before the election up until afterwards. And now, after the verdict has been delivered.
For now.
Allegations.
For now.
For now.
Because, hey.
Because we're litigious people, according to the senior advocate of Nigeria from yesterday. For now, I agree with you, Ayo. Allegations of fraud against Tinubu not proved. Tinubu academically qualified to contest for president. Strikes out dual nationality case against Tinubu, clears Tinubu of drug-related cases in US. LP's Obi did not prove how he won presidential election. INEC at liberty to choose mode of result transmission. That's the tribunal verdict, people. And lastly, return to work today, NLC tells workers after warning strike. Let's leave it there for this Nigeria.
The Leadership newspaper is speaking in the same breath. Tinubu won 2023 presidential election, court declares. That story has its details on page 4. And of course, decisions of the courts on each of the cases is right there on the front page. But let's also keep our eyes on other news, one of which is this one. NERC approves 40% increase in prepaid meter prices. Yes, that's right there on the front page of the Leadership newspaper, and you find the details of it on page 30 of the paper this morning. So bear that in mind. At the bottom of that page, POS operator arraigned over theft of 326.9 million naira. Several other stories on the front page, including that one. Tribunals declare Natasha Onyejocha winners of Kogi Abia National Assembly seats. That and more on the inside pages of the Leadership newspaper this morning.
Okay, very interesting there. Particularly that part where reps are vowing to unveil the identity of oil thieves. Are we back here again? Well, they'll all be interesting to see if they actually put their money where their mouth is now, Mr. Speaker. I mean, many will be watching to see you do that. So, because we've been through this route before, haven't we? Okay, let's take a look at New Telegraph next. PEPT dismisses APM, LP, PDP's petitions against Tinubu's election. Rules that Tinubu was duly elected as announced by INEC. 25% vote in FCT not required to win presidential poll, says petitioners have 21 days to appeal judgment. Verdict reflects maturation of legal system. Tinubu urges challengers to support his government. LP kicks, says ruling not based on law. Judgment thorough, ascribed to APC. We're still studying ruling, says Ohaneze, as Sanwo-Olu. Others applaud verdict. So that's what you get right here. That lead story. Okay. And then let's see. Oh, remember that incident at Lagos Airport, guys? Look at, there's some piece of information here about our news. Inverter battery sparks fire at Lagos Airport. So if you use an inverter, so read this and see, okay, what type is this? So that you're cautious, at least have information about what to do so you don't fall to the same scenario. And then at the bottom strip, you can see there, Northeast insurgency cost Nigeria $100 billion in 13 years, ascribed to UNICEF. You may want to see that database and how this came about. Urges FG to address funding gap in nutrition, says 17.7 million Nigerians unsure of next meal. We're determined to end Boko Haram war that's ascribed to military. So that's why I say you need to just read this and see the basis. So if all of those states say they're distributing palliatives, and then you see where it says 17.7 million Nigerians unsure of next meal. So it will raise questions as to coordination, because if they go ahead and distribute all those palliatives, and what data do they have? Are they harmonizing that data with the center such that the country can then say, okay, yeah, we're developing something that we could work with moving forward? Because you need all of that, because you say follow the money. So if you don't have the base, distribute all of these things, you may just end up in certain places and not achieve the results with which, or the result which people expected. So that's the Telegraph, by the way.
And from there, we turn to the Nigerian News Direct. Well, the work of the TUC is cut out for it, because I recall the TUC president saying also that in those states where the palliatives are not effectively distributed, where they're not getting to the people, then they're going to picket those states. So if you have 17 million Nigerians who do not know where their next meal will come from, Labour should look at that, particularly the TUC that has expressed the resolve to do so.
Government actually looks at it, because all Labour can do is what? Raise the issues and protest. Those people who are hungry are in certain states.
Of the Federation.
Now they have about, each one of them has at the very least 2 billion naira now, and they have some stock of food from the federal government. They should fish out those people and make sure that they get fed.
It is on the strength of, the efficacy of the distribution,
exactly,
which a section of Labour has decided to take on if it's not well done.
Absolutely. Yeah. So please.
So then, on both ends, you're right on that, Ayo. The Nigerian News Direct also follows up on, the outcome of the tribunal ruling yesterday. Knox applause as tribunal upholds victory of President Tinubu. Host of writers here affirms FCT as a state, dismisses special status. Says INEC can't be forced to transmit election results electronically. Well, that got me confused. Of course, we'll ask on your behalf as well if you're on the same page with me. We'll ask our lawyers who will be joining us on the conversation later on today. Faults Labour Party for failing to give credible evidence. APC Governor Abiodun, Governor Sanwo-Olu congratulate Tinubu, Shetima. There are quite a number of other stories at the bottom strip that will also interest you. Of course, I highlighted this earlier on. Police arrest 2 protesters at Unilag over tuition fee hike. Now, this got me worried and thinking, what exactly is their offense, the offense of the protesters? Were they fomenting violence, or was their offense just because they protested? The right to protest should be, protected, should be guaranteed under the law, as long as they're not engaged in any form of violence. Well, we saw that take place yesterday outside the Unilag premises. We saw a bit of unrest there, but should have been taken care of by now by security operatives. There's also this one, NERC hikes price of electricity meters by 40%. That's price of electricity meters. So there's also the price of
the electricity
itself that they're planning to hike. That Labour has appealed to be put on hold, but the price of meters has gone up. So many unwholesome consequences on our. Well, I plan to also take a look at this one. FG inks $1 billion agreement to boost local manufacturing of defense equipment. That should be followed up on.
Absolutely.
Has to be there for the Nigerian News Direct.
I'm actually seeing job creation right there.
Yeah.
Lead story of Daily Independent this morning is on the same issue that other papers are leading with. Tribunal affirms Tinubu's election, dismisses APM's petition. is devoid of merit, says Peter Obi's case is unmeritorious, declares FCT not special in respect of 25% votes. Atiku's petition can't survive, it is incompetent. Tinubu assures on unified, peaceful, prosperous nation. The details of that continue on the inside pages. Right above the nameplate, just something we mentioned earlier. Only a careless government will ignore our warning. That's according to the NLC. Asks workers to resume work today. The details you'll find on the inside pages. Oh, there's a follow-up to the main story at the bottom of that picture. LP rejects tribunal judgment, says it weeps for Nigeria's democracy. Details on page 7. Tribunal declares Akpoti Oduaghan winner of Kogi Central senatorial poll, and a host of other stories. So that's this interesting one right there. Oil theft. Navy destroys vessel laden with 20,000 liters of AGO in rivers. That's AGO is not Assistant General Manager Operations. It is diesel. It is fuel. Stories on page 8, and that issue again of what some people term as destroying evidence. Find the details on the inside pages. And that's that story. Insurgency, 35,000 persons killed in Northeast since 2009, according to UNHCR. That story is on page 7. Not good to hear, but I guess that is our reality. That's the Daily Independent newspaper this morning.
Okay, the Vanguard newspaper is next. Why Atiku Obi's petitions against Tinubu failed. Subscribe to the tribunal here this morning. Obi LP failed to prove rigging over voting. Portions of Obi's petition vague, imprecise, nebulous, bereft of particular materials. Obi validly nominated by LP. Then you see, these are the highlights of the judgment anyways. And then you see Shatima validly nominated as APC's vice presidential candidate. No evidence Tinubu was convicted in US for drug trafficking. Tinubu not indicted, arraigned, tried, or convicted in US. For $460,000 forfeiture, a civil matter, not criminal conviction. Then the last bit, INEC can't be forced to transmit election results electronically. On 25% votes, Abuja not special than other states. Oof. So there you go. That's what transpired all day yesterday. And then elsewhere, you get to see above this lead story tucked in here, UK to declare Wagner Group terrorist organization, as ascribed to a certain report. Redesign failed portion of Southeast Road with concrete. Umahi orders contractors. I know he's also told them that, look, any contractor who doesn't want to comply with using concrete should be ready for a fight. So it will be interesting to hear what their reasons or arguments will be if they don't give or don't comply with what the minister wants done, because that's going to be a lot more durable moving forward. But I guess it's part of what we're going to keep tabs on. So, oh yeah, look at this piece here by NCC. Multiple taxation hindering Nigeria's economic growth. And then many are now waiting. Now that they've approved increase of prepaid meters by what, 40%? Does it mean that the next thing to expect is increase in electricity tariff? I mean, even if it doesn't come now, at some point it will still come. So isn't that going to be, what now, making it a lot more challenging for people? Because if they're trying to get funds from somewhere, and then the ones for the meters are, I mean, electricity is delayed, and then you go through this way, if that's the way it comes across to some people, really. And then the meters are increased, then much later, it's good to hear that, well, the tariff has hiked because of national prices and several other things, reasons. Oh boy, who will save the common man? Common men like us. Well, that's Vanguard this morning.
Well, somebody is certainly not common. Up next is the Nigerian Tribune. And it also follows up with the tribunal ruling from yesterday. PEPC affirms Tinubu's victory, dismisses Atiku Obi APM's petitions. Listen to the riders. Says FCT has no special voters, insists fine by US court didn't disqualify him. Asserts INEC can't be forced to electronically transmit election results. Rules Shetima eligible to contest. Tinubu hails judgment, asks challengers to put patriotism over partisan consideration. LP rejects judgment. And listen to this one. Akpakpa faction endorses verdict. So it's not just the ranks of organized labor that has been broken. The ranks of the Labour Party also has evidently been broken. But there are some other stories for you to also reflect on at the bottom strip. How fire incident created panic at Lagos airport. There should be some lessons to be learned there. Thanks to men of the fire service, the fire was put out in good time. But in the future, something should be done about that. Students protest over fees at Unilag. And lastly, from the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning, 5 escape death, property destroyed as flood ravages Ekiti. That's a page 15 read from the Nigerian Tribune. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
Well, that story about students protesting in Lagos is the lead picture on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper this morning. In fact, it shows a particular figure right there, 160,750. What does that mean? You want to check the details of the story on the inside pages. I believe it should be found there. But the main story, of course, is the same. Labour Party rejects tribunal verdict, weeps for democracy in Nigeria as PEPC upholds Tinubu's victory. The details on the inside pages. I look at that concerning one right above the nameplate. Manufacturing production costs skyrocket by 17.3% amidst FX macro challenges as investments dips by 5.6% in Q2 2023. For me, what I see when I see such a story is my fear of job losses owing to organizations not being able to sustain their production.
The business environment.
Yes. So for me, that's something very, very troubling, and I hope all eyes are on to ensure that we stand as a nation and we survive as a nation. Be ready for indefinite strike if FG fails to react appropriately to Nigerians' yearnings. That's according to the NLC. The details you'll find on the inside pages. And look at this one at the bottom of the page. 2023 PEPC judgment, failure to unseat sitting president resonates. At presidential level, nothing changes in nation's political dynamic. Find the details of that. And that story, Akwa Ibom adds 5 billion naira to support FG's palliatives, is on page 5. Can we also have the reactions of people or proof of people who have been benefiting or are benefiting from these palliatives? That will help some people to know, and some other state governments to be challenged that they need to do better by their people, and then everyone, including the NLC and I, will be pacified. And with the Daily Times newspaper this morning, we have come to an end of this part of the program, which is looking at what the dailies have said or are saying. But then there is more on this program after this break. Do stay with us.
a huge success, not only for APC as a political party in Nigeria, but it is a huge success for Nigerians and also a huge success for democracy. This has shown that democracy has come to stay and our judiciary is highly respected, and not only the judiciary, but also even the press, even the media, the various media. You see how we have come along, and you see how we have tolerated each other. So I can say that this is the beginning of the maturity of democracy in this country. We have to thank the politicians, even the leaders of the political parties. We have to thank them for showing maturity, especially the presidential candidate for PDP and that of Labour Party. We have to appreciate them, we have to thank them, because they also do contribute to stability of democracy in this country. We have to inform you that we respect the judiciary, because if you see how 5 of them are unanimous on the verdict that they have shown this evening, and not only that, all the other consolidated allegations, complaints by the opposition, all the 3 consolidated petitions have been exhausted, especially the issue of disqualification of our presidential candidate and his running mate, or the vice president at the moment. You can see how that one was dispensed. Also the issue of malpractices in the election, you could see how the judges were able to treat it and dispensed everything and we're happy that this program was done live, so that Nigerians will definitely know what has happened, instead of relying on social media where some political parties are inciting people. If APC is being manipulating the result, how can we lose presidential election in Katsina State, which was the state of the existing president at that time? And how can we lose presidential election in Lagos, where we have our own presidential candidate? So you can see that APC has done a lot, and we have to thank our followers, and we are now ready to continue giving dividends of democracy to the people of Nigeria.
All right, welcome back. So that was the reaction of the chairman of the APC after the judgment was concluded last night. What a day it was, as a matter of fact. We've got Mr. Eze Onyekpare joining us here this morning. He's a legal practitioner. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
My pleasure.
Well, before we even go in and take a look at some parts of that, the judgment, highlights of the judgment, yesterday was, nobody saw that coming. I mean, regular people thought, well, maybe they start and in 2, 3, okay, maybe max 4 hours. Some stretched it and said, okay, 5 hours, we should be wrapped up, done, pack your bags, everybody go home. But no way. At 10 p.m. last night, they were just, I think they wrapped up at about that time, and then just giving the usual conclusions, statements from lawyers and things like that. But how do you see why it took that long, first and foremost?
Well, let's say that it was a marathon judgment. They wanted to exhaust and clarify all the issues so that nobody will say that the judgment left any issue in context, not resolving it or not taking a position on it. So they went into the minute details, and then everybody had to read his opinion. And at the end of the day, that's why it took so long. But I think for people of that age, both the judges and the lawyers, there was a need for not just a 15-minute break, but that when people got tired, they would go out and stretch their legs. There could have been 1 hour in between. These are the kind of things that the doctors will tell you will possibly lead to some health challenges for people at that level, that age. This is not just, we're not discussing young men and women 15, 20, 30. We're discussing men in their 60s and maybe 70s. So I think going up in future, they should be able to see how to break these things down in such a way that maybe you could take some to them, maybe the following day you take the others.
And then there was also that thought, wondering, so when they broke all of these things down, as you also describe it, what more can the Supreme Court do? Because if it's really this clear, many just wonder, it doesn't make it, somewhat easier for Supreme Court to decide upon.
They have taken their positions on these issues. And many Nigerians do not agree, and legal practitioners, with their position. So it makes it easier for those who felt shortchanged by the judgment to look at the facts, look at the law, and then lodge the proper appeal at the Supreme Court for them to have the final say. So it even makes it easier for the appellants to find out exactly what they're complaining against and then present it before the court. It will even make the work of the Supreme Court easier. We
also had Chris Uchesi and demanding for the judgment.
Certified true copy.
Yeah, yes. that day.
Yes.
So that because that time.
Yeah, that time. Between now and 60 days, the Supreme Court must give its judgment. And the earlier you go before the court so that they start looking at the materials, the better.
What did you think about the live coverage?
Well, if you recall that at the beginning of the proceedings, some Nigerians had demanded that they wanted to have live coverage of the tribunal proceedings to get a blow-by-blow account of what is happening, how evidence is admitted or rejected, or how they have been interacting with the parties before them. But they turned it down that it's not a comedy session, it's not a drama session. So some of us are wondering what actually changed when it came to the time of the judgment. Because if you understand the law properly, when a court is trying a case, particularly a case of such national significance and importance as this, the court is also on trial. It is the prerogative of reasonable men and women to sit back and decide to watch even the demeanor of the judges and how they are performing their judicial duties, as to form their own opinion whether justice is being done, because the justice is not just what you did on the last day. It's a continuous exercise. What you did on the first day built up into the second day until you were ready to read the judgment. So some of us were wondering what exactly changed between that first request, which was turned down, and this one, which on the court on its own, so much, the court, there was nobody who applied. The court on its own now said, everybody should come. Everybody should watch. We are ready to read the judgment. So I thought that they would have allowed this live proceedings from the beginning of the case up to the conclusion.
Because many say, look, why is it that Nigerian judiciary took this stance? And for instance, in several countries across the world, several high-profile cases, they see what transpires, blow-by-blow account, they see the faces of the judges. But in this case, we don't see their faces.
Even yesterday, I hardly saw the face of any judge. I don't know if I'm right or wrong.
You're very right. That was a directive. That
yes, nobody.
Just
so what exactly were they hiding? There are things that raises questions. These are Nigerians. Many lawyers know them. Many people know them. What exactly were they hiding to say, don't put the camera? Because even the idea of you hearing a voice without seeing the person, the reading, the face, the gesticulations, even the way the person looks, makes it look somehow like an artificial intelligence kind of proceeding. There was absolutely no reason why we shouldn't have seen them. And nobody, there was no provision of the law, no rules of court that said that their faces should be hidden. Why do you have to hide if you know you are doing the right thing? So some of these things were questions agitating the minds of some Nigerians yesterday.
Okay, so to some of the highlights now. So yesterday, many thought, will there be one dissenting voice, two dissenting voices, but they were disappointed. And then the consolidated petitions all dismissed. And the way and manner that it came through as well is what several reactions, 25% votes in the FCT, not compulsory to have that. Shatima validly nominated, even Itobe himself validly nominated by the Labour Party. So virtually no case submission.
Well, what happened yesterday did not start yesterday. is a culmination of the understanding of the jurisprudence of electoral dispute adjudication from the Obasanjo days. The courts have been doing it up till yesterday. Now, I say with utmost respect that why we will continue, or why these kind of decisions are coming from the courts, is that the courts have failed to ask a simple question. What is the purpose? What is the goal of electoral dispute adjudication? If I may provide an answer, it is to determine who actually got the majority of the lawful votes from the electorate. Since Section 1, Subsection 2 of the Constitution says the Constitution is supreme, nobody should take control of the whole federation or any part hereof in a way and manner not in accordance with the provisions of this Constitution, which means you can only lead or purport to lead by virtue of the votes. But that hasn't been happening. What has been happening is that the judges, not just this panel alone, usually go what I call a wild goose chase, put adjectival law, put all kinds of challenges and obstacles on the road. So they are not actually trying to determine who won, but it's like who can display more of the knowledge of legal technicalities and gymnastics. Let's look at this way. The petitioners went to court. For the first 2 to 3 weeks, the court gave an order to INEC to provide them, give them access to beavers and materials. It took almost 2 to 3 weeks before they could have access. And they didn't have more than a couple of days before INEC came back with an application they want to wipe out because they have to use the machine for another election. If you recall, in so many states of the Federation, the INEC put obstacles on the way of petitioners to access the materials and information they need. Now you put the whole blame, the whole onus, because hearing the judgment yesterday, the recurring decimal was the petitioner failed, the petitioner failed. At some point, it was sounding like a rebuke to the petitioner for coming to court in the first place. All right? Now, if you are presuming regularity from a government agency like INEC, and it has been shown to you that there was nothing regular about what they have done. They uploaded materials on the net, and you have materials from Katsina in Port Harcourt or in Abia, you have from Abia in Maiduguri, all those kind of things. That rebuts that presumption of regularity. It should be up to the commission to show why it has to be believed. You put everything on a petitioner, just a political party leader, and he's not part of INEC, he's not part of the police, he's not part of the law enforcement agencies. You now want him to also prove. For instance, INEC put up a portal. They also manipulated the portal. And you want the petitioners to prove how INEC manipulated the portal. It is up to INEC to come forward with credible evidence that a portal, which they told Nigerians was the game changer, suddenly went off for a few hours and resumed the following day. And the few hours it went off were the critical hours when it had to be relied upon. You also said nobody can force INEC to electronically transmit the result. Did anybody intend to force INEC? INEC came out with regulations. And we are the ones who asked the National Assembly to give them money, public money, my tax money, my honest sweat. And it was given to them. They built up a portal and regaled Nigerians at various fora, from Mr. Yakubu to Festus Okoye to all of them, both within Nigeria and outside, about the game changer they had. And at the critical moment, they failed. And you are saying nobody can force them. Did anybody intend to force them? They made a promise, spent taxpayers' money, and failed. And instead of rebuking them, you are rebuking a petitioner who says, I relied on what my government official who took my taxpayers' money and blew it in the air did. But how can you be hard to say that? So it's a proper misdirection, because you get people who call themselves senior advocates try to dance around these things. Why is Nigeria perpetually a toddler? Why are we not making progress? In 2015, the card reader issue came up, all right? And the Supreme Court said, oh, it's not in the law, it's not this one. When you have a mischief in the law which has been identified. You recall the Saraki Senate even amended the Electoral Act which Buhari didn't want to sign. Even the Senate and the House did. It was at the last minute that he was forced by public opinion to sign. These amendments, some of them, we are meant to cure the mischief that were discovered close to 10 years, 5, 7, 8, 10 years ago. And we are still repeating the same thing, we don't learn from our mistakes if they were mistakes, making me to believe that these things were deliberately planned and have the courts affirm them. And then what message are we sending? What message?
You know, when you say that, was anybody trying to force INEC to prove or to upload?
Upload, yeah.
But what about when, I mean, you all say that he who alleges must prove, and the lawyers know it. So isn't that a similar scenario that if you're going to court to say INEC didn't do this, you must be ready to prove your case?
Sorry. There are facts peculiarly within the knowledge of an individual or an institution. And in law, those facts, the onus is on the person to come and give evidence on why he shouldn't be held, that this thing should proceed in the normal course of things. You built a portal, or you commissioned experts to build a portal. When they finished, they reported to you. You were given the back end, the passwords. Your own IT technicians are the ones who are now in charge. The person who built it has gone. All right? And you made a promise to everybody, uncoerced. It's not like anybody forced you. You came out in public and said this is a game changer. So when you did not deliver, should I have the onus to show why you did not deliver? When I don't have access to the engine room, the back end, the passwords and anything, it is you who should come and tell us. And don't tell us things that don't make sense. Oh, you had a glitch. What is a glitch? You shut down a system, you say it's a glitch.
So on the flip side of this, listening to all of that judgment too, and then, of course, people will interpret certain things differently. But doesn't this also suggest that for some, they think, okay, well, if this is the judgment and how it has come down, are they trying to also say, well, there are several loopholes in the laws. So if you don't want this to repeat itself, let us go back and correct our laws and be more specific about who needs to do what, particularly INEC, moving forward.
Yes, we have always had this idea of a new electoral act after every election. But this thing is beyond putting things down in a law. It's about a mindset. Because the way these judgments are proceeding to say, oh, show me where it is in the law, it gets to a stage, Chamberlain, where you will be asked to show where it is in the law that you must eat. Or that after 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, you can visit the bathroom. It's about the mindset of the operatives, rather than saying, because you will end up with a 1,000-page piece of paper, right, called a law, which will be passed by a National Assembly and signed. But we live in a normal human society where you cannot anticipate all the issues and challenges that will come up. And somebody must always take advantage. Why are we always taking advantage to game the system? Okay? You say it is not in the law. What exactly, on what basis did INEC collect this money? Taxpayers' money. Blew it up unapologetically. Stop the parties from gaining proper access to the records they need. And all we hear, the judges who even gave the order, never at any time we are angry enough to try to cite INEC officials for contempt. They were playing on. Nothing was wrong. So we can't make progress based on this. You see, let me explain to you. We all went studied law, went to the university, read jurisprudence, read evidence, read adjectival law. The truth is that any position you want to take in law, you can find a justification. Whether it is justice, whether it is about what the people expect of you. Listen carefully. Judges are public servants like every other person. They are supposed to interpret the law, not in a vacuum, to advance society. Otherwise, why were we blaming military dictators who made laws, okay, that we did not like? If we go on just this rabid positivism, oh, show me where it is written. Buhari, the former president who handed over to him, shot people because they were involved in drugs. And the trial, nobody can even verify whether it was a proper fair trial under those military decrees. And before we could say Jack, he killed them. Now we have a situation. The Constitution never anticipated that somebody who will be nominated by a political party will have a history of forfeiting money based on involvement in drug proceedings.
It's a civil matter.
No. It's not about that. Now, official proceedings are not civil matters per se. They are a hybrid between civil and criminal matters. Okay, look at the Desiani case we have in Nigeria. You are suspecting, the government says, this money we found in your account or this property is beyond your lawful and legitimate income. Come and show us, it must have been the proceed of an unlawful activity, a crime.
So the character
come and show us how you got it. They do an interim order, which they didn't give you the opportunity to come. They now advertise and invite you to come and show how you legitimately got this money. And if once you're unable to do that, the court now says this must be the process of crime or illegality. And so the money is forfeited. So to tell me that it's simple civil proceedings is reading the law upside down. We all went to school. The fact that you became a judge doesn't, yes, you have a duty to perform, you have the authority, but it doesn't give you any special learning to turn very simple, straightforward things. Let me tell you something. Whenever you see a professional becoming extremely technical, speaking highfalutin Latinate jargons is a sign that he doesn't understand his duty, because whatever you can say and whatever you want to express can be done in simple ease and words that doesn't bewilder.
It's not legal jargon.
It doesn't need to bewilder anybody, because everybody's bewildered as how a man who could not contest the forfeiture of his $460,000, and you say there is no blame. He says you must be arraigned, you must listen. Why did he not contest that? The Constitution didn't anticipate that kind of thing, that a man will be the president of Nigeria with what? Nobody knows when he was born, conflicting documents, nobody knows the schools he attended, conflicting. No, we can't continue behaving like that. When you get to the international airport, they say Nigerians this way, step aside, you complain. How did you arrive at that thing? So this is beyond just abstruse legalism. Okay, the petitioner failed. As if to say all we are coming was like the petitioners had to be rebooked.
Welcome back. It's still Sunrise Daily on Channels Television, and we're still reviewing the tribunal judgment on the petitions against the victory of the President Bola Tinubu. We have with us Mr. Onyekpere, and joining us again is Mr. Bayojo, former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Oyo State. Mr. Onyekpere, let me just quickly follow up on your position, that the tribunal justices were more akin towards recommending the petitioners, for the petitioners failed to. But if we look closely at the position put forward by the justices, let me just read some of the notes here. The petitioners failed to specify the anomalies where the anomalies occurred, the polling units that they occurred, where there was no election. They failed to state the scores that were used. As a matter of fact, the only female justice on the panel, in her own ruling yesterday, also observed that one of the witnesses that was asked about what he thought the scores would be had they won the election and had the results been uploaded to the IREV portal as at when due. She said the witness said, how was he supposed to know when the results were not uploaded? So it would seem.
Collect result. It is not. That's where they are making the mistake.
But Mr. Ojo, Mr. Ojo, doesn't that defeat the purpose of Section 60 sub 5 of the Electoral Act, which says that the presiding officer shall transfer the results, including total number of accredited votes and the results of the ballot, in a manner as prescribed by the Commission? And the Commission by itself prescribed electronic transmission of results. Mr. Ojo, did you get that?
Oh.
It appears as if we've lost connection through to Mr. Ojo. Let's return to Mr. Onyekpere, who is with us in our Abuja studios. Mr. Onyekpere, perhaps we should now begin to look at, other aspects of the ruling, particularly, that brought before the court by the APM. If that has been dispensed with, as a pre-election matter, please educate us why other issues like the disqualification based on the qualification of the president and his indictment in the US, why those do not also qualify as a pre-election matter. Perhaps you could educate us on that.
Well, the whole idea is that if there are matters that can be dispensed of before the petition itself or the election is conducted, parties should take advantage of that. But you also know that all those issues, most of those issues are matters within the exclusive jurisdiction of the parties, and an outsider cannot simply come in and start challenging those issues from another party. If you are not a member of the party, you are not even an official, you are not even a contestant in any of those primaries. But I think the important thing, the clarification I needed to say from what my learned colleague was talking about was that there was a mischief in the existing law, like the challenge of the card reader, okay, which they said was not part of the law. And the mischief also was that there's always this issue of results being exchanged or being manipulated in the night between the polling booths and where they're being transferred and the collation center. So the idea of this IREV was like, this is what happens. Everybody can be able to see it, so that when you get to the collation center and produce a result different from the one you've entered there, people can now say, wait a minute, this is not what we have seen, it is different. So by denying people the opportunity of seeing that, to be able to make a comparison, you've rubbished the background, the framework of transparency. So I'm not saying it should be compulsory, but once you make that, promise to the people and use taxpayers' money, you should not be hard to come back to say that it is of no moment, it is of no consequence. Can you be called to bring back the billions that were used to build a server? If you cannot build it back, you cannot be called back to bring it, then there is no basis. And my challenge to what happened is not that the difference between me and him, the point of departure, is that he's reaffirming the status quo. And I'm saying the status quo can no longer continue, it is wrong. That is why we are backward. That is why nobody is respecting our elections. And he's merely reaffirming the status quo, reaffirming what I say is wrong. So that's the departure. I am saying it has come to a point where we must change this jurisprudence, that you have possession of documents, that Chamberlain has possession of documents, has a blow-by-blow account of what is happening, and Onyekpere is put on the strictest proof of a matter particularly within your knowledge, of a matter you have a constitutional and statutory right to superintend. And I ask you to give me the information. You place all kinds of obstacles on my way. You balk. And the courts that gave the order that you should give me the information simply what two of us, as if to say we are not performing a public duty. So we can't make progress with that kind of jurisprudential mindset.
All right.
So if the law needs to be amended, so be it. If the constitution needs to be amended, so be it. And I'm even saying that even within the context of existing law, the judges did not exploit all the loopholes and parts of the law that would have given substantial justice. What they have read is technical justice. I agree with what you say, I disagree. That's all. The evidence is this. Why are you rejecting the evidence of the Gambian passport? And then you're admitting some. What is the basis? Okay, so this is the point I'm making. I am not here to say the law as it is good. I'm come here to say we need to change.
Well, Mr. Onyekpere, on that particular one, I mean, just as you said, and I think a number of other legal practitioners agree, it's not going to be the only court of instance in this case. There are still opportunity, and I think the Labour Party has already said that they're going to make their case for what is next going forward. But speaking about our institutions. Speaking about the judiciary as an institution, I'm happy you said that if there is a need to change the law, if there is a need to change the constitution, these things need to happen. But then the institutions are powered by these laws. These laws do not power themselves, they are powered by individuals just as yourself who make up the institution. So in terms of the process, in terms of institutional parameters, in the name of national unity, in the name of patriotism, what is missing here and what do we need to fix in order to retain the integrity and shore up the image of Nigeria in the Committee of Nations?
Transparency is key. We need to have an INEC that is not beholden to the ruling party and the powers that be, that is as much open to opposition parties as it is to the ruling party. We need to have an INEC whose word is this bond, particularly the word of the leadership. When they take taxpayers' money to say this is what we are going to deliver, they deliver it without equivocation. And not to tell Nigerians this is a game changer today, and tomorrow you completely deny and do a volte-face to the statement you made a couple of days ago. Maybe since we need everything to be in the law, we may need a 1,000-page Electoral Act which stipulates everything, including the time that electoral officials should breathe and when they have to go to use the loo and when they have to go and eat. Maybe everything, word by word, 1,000 pages should be there so that nobody will have an excuse of trying to take advantage or game the system. My worry is that the message being sent to Nigerians is an unpalatable one. And the message is simply manipulate your way, be declared a winner, and then you place a very heavy burden and onus on the person who is trying to challenge you. So what you will see in the next election is that everybody will go all out, okay, to violate the law. And at the end of the day, we have this brazen situation where the law is held in contempt. To the extent that the law we have now and the judicial proceedings and processes we have now are returning the results they are returning, shows you that something is fundamentally flawed. And we need to change that. Otherwise, we will be left behind in time and space. Other nations are moving forward. Nigeria is a laughingstock in the Committee of Nations. We can't continue pretending. If we want to pretend, good luck.
Well, Mr. Ojo, thank you for joining back on the program this morning. So there's a question we asked yesterday, Bukola and I asked one of your colleagues in the inner bar, who we asked about awareness and education for Nigerians in terms of, from the example of what happened yesterday. And then we also asked about the legality of law, the morality of law, and the sentiments of law. Which one of them played up or was likely to play up more yesterday? And he referenced the fact that most of the time we seem to go with one. I'm not going to let you know which one he said. I'd like you to speak to that yourself. First of all, how much of this process would you say was educational enough for people to know how the judiciary works in Nigeria? And then in terms of the legality of law, the morality of law, and the sentiment of law, which one do you think we tend to go with more, as opposed to the one that ought to, or unfortunately, Mr. Ojo has left us for this moment. But if you can take that on as well, Mr. Onyekwere, legality, morality, the legality of law, the morality of law, the sentiments of law, which one usually plays up more, as opposed to which one should play up more?
I think you are raising a very deep jurisprudential question. Now, if you look at our laws as we have them, murder is an offense, stealing is an offense. They are all based on moral axioms that as a Christian you talk in your commandments, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not commit adultery. And this is what transformed into laws. Now the question you are raising is, what gap should society allow between those moral axioms which everybody agrees is wrong and the legalism of what you put down on paper. Ideally, your moral conscience, the moral dictates of the society, should influence the codification of your law. Okay? Our sense of what is right and wrong should be what you find in the law. And once you find a gulf between that sense of what is right and wrong, is what is creating this scenario that we have now. It is not about lawyers like me or the SN or anybody speaking highfalutin here. Go to the streets and measure how the woman selling pepe or the man pushing a wheelbarrow, what is his impression about lawyering and judicialism? His impression is like some guys creating sayings for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the society. So we must, so it's not a legalism should take cognizance of the morals of the society, should take cognizance of the sense of right and wrong. Otherwise, legalism is a failure.
Okay, so as we wind down on this one, what about what you always say, that the law is not about what happens in the court of public opinion, you know, it's about how you can prove your case before the justices. But what do you then make of one of the justices when she said that she made reference to social media, pressure from social media, and people needed to prove their case as opposed to relying on some of those things?
Well, that shows that the judge is a human being. She reads the social media. She's living in Nigeria. Whatever you see, like we are doing this morning, if she's not sitting, she could possibly be listening to us. So there is no way anybody can pretend that you are sitting there, you are not part of society. So that is why, yes, you need to prove your case before the court. And what I'm saying is that both the rules of the court and substantive law should, if they are not already in good state, should be regied in such a way that the votes will count. Because the intention of the Constitution to say, do not take control of Nigeria in a way and manner not recognized by the Constitution, is not only a warning against military coup. Rigging elections, which when you did not actually win, somebody else won, returns you, you are taking control of Nigeria in a way and manner not recognized by the Constitution, is the same as a coup, more or less. So what I'm saying in essence is that we need to rejig these laws. We need to rejig the procedures. The judges need to rejig their mindset. They need to ask, they need to raise the fundamental poser. What is the purpose of our sitting to adjudicate electoral disputes? If the answer he gave is wrong, they could answer the questions themselves, throw it open to Nigerians, and we arrive conclusively at a proper goal, so that you do not set questions for yourself. You leave the question society wants you to answer. The question is who won the elections? Lawful majority. It's not about any technical rules of evidence and things that nobody understands beyond the few who are lawyers.
Okay. But the other question is that before all these lawyers took up these cases and went to defend it, they knew all of these things. They knew that this may be the likely outcome. It could go either way. Someone will lose, someone will win, and then there'll be several other scenarios about the laws. So I just wonder, is it that they were surprised that it came this way, or they didn't know that, look, these are the kind of cases, but they're all experienced lawyers, senior lawyers.
That will also tell you, I mean, we are not discussing baby lawyers. These are big senior advocates who are experienced and who have done litigation at this level. In various other cases, some they have won, some they have also lost. So that tells you how difficult this procedure is. And that's why I'm saying there are things that you will need to prove your case. If it is not within your reach, and the person who has it is not in any way assisting, he keeps a mindset that he must obstruct you. Even if you were to resurrect the late Chief Rotimi Williams, there's no change. Nothing will change. So that's why I'm saying the reform should be about the roots, branches, the leaves, so that we have a new system. I expect the National Assembly to look at this judgment, although there's still a channel of appeal to the Supreme Court. But to be honest with you, I don't expect much. I'm not anticipating any change between what the Court of Appeal says. I wouldn't expect much change. I'm not trying to second guess them, but that's my own feeling with what I see has played out with the cases that.
But isn't that like a general principle that if cases at the first instance go a certain way.
You must go upstairs.
Usually,
if you have the lever, I mean,
yeah, but they say usually if you go upstairs, chances are, if not over 90% of the time, it is the precedent that has been laid there that will always
that will
held.
also be used. Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. But I'm saying that some of these precedents we are citing did not take cognizance. I keep repeating of certain facts. If I'm the only person who witnessed a transaction and I know everything about it, Chamberlain, it will be extremely right and proper to say, Eze, you were the only one in this room with this cameraman. And he was very hale and healthy. And suddenly we come back 30 minutes after, and he's lying on the floor foaming. He has an injury on his head, which could have been done by an instrument. And I raise my hands to say, I don't know what you people are talking. It is right and proper to hold me to account for how he fell and what led to that injury. But if somebody else was here and I'm coming in from the room because I saw him first and raised the issue, you now tell me to go and do it. It's not possible. Even if I were a supercomputer, I cannot do it.
So shouldn't this be like a springboard upon which we will then say, as a society, perhaps those other lawyers who are involved could help us, will marshal out some of these quote-unquote loopholes that we've seen here.
Good.
And then say, okay, moving forward, because any country always has to think about moving forward.
That's true.
So we can then say, all right, in order to ensure that we keep rebuilding confidence in our electoral system and getting the electoral system right, because even the leadership of INEC today will not be there tomorrow. They will not be there forever. So a new set of people will be in. So shouldn't we then say, give us these areas where we think things need to be corrected. Let's insist on changing them.
What happened in this election may not be more different from what happened in Yar'Adua's election. And Yar'Adua was forthright and man enough to say, yes, I've been declared winner. The Supreme Court has confirmed me. I can vouch with all honesty and sincerity that these elections had challenges. He confessed. And he set up the Ways Committee. But before that committee could finish, he had left. Right. What happened to that committee report? Do we need to reinvent the wheel? Some of the recommendations were that you don't have a sitting president who is going to run elections, being the one appointing members of the INEC. You don't put all the onus and burden of proof on a petitioner who just contested the election, who is not part of the police, is not part of INEC. These are people who have information of what happened. And once he says the election, challenges the election, he says prove beyond reasonable doubt. That INEC should also have some part of the onus. And burden to now show that they organized the election in accordance with the laws of the land, because Mr. A said he did not organize it in accordance with the law. You have the facts. And part of how INEC will show that is like this national database and register to say, give us a blow by blow, poly unit by poly unit. You produce it before the court. All these beavers, machines and things, you should be bound under the law, be under obligation to distill certain parameters from it and hand over to the courts, even without anybody giving you a subpoena to do that. Not that when they give you a subpoena, you bulk and make it impossible. So let's go back to that Ways report. Let's review it. We can't continue every time. We have a number of reports gathering dust across in all sectors of whether it's in defense, whether it's in education, whether it's in health. Let's go back to that report.
Okay. Let's bring in our colleagues in Lagos.
Yes, thank you, Chamberlain. I believe Mr. Abayojo has since joined us again, and I hope that the network is better this time. Mr. Ojo, the conversation has since progressed to whether or not we need to amend the laws, and Mr. Onyekpere is, recommending that we revisit the Ways report. I'd like you to weigh in on that as well. And, earlier on I was asking if your position that IREV is not a collation center, doesn't it defeat the purpose of the Section 60, subsection 5 of the Electoral Act, which states that INEC, shall transmit the election results as they so desire, and for which IO was also re-emphasizing earlier on that was what it promised. So I'd like you to weigh in on both issues. Mr. Ojo.
Yes, thank you. Let me say this. I'm not one that is used to make motherhood statements. I'm a practical person. And maybe because I'm a legal practitioner. We have lawyers that are not in active legal practice. So get that point clear. Look, I said IREV. is just a few portal. It's just a few portal to see your results. It's not a collection center. In Nigeria, our election, we are not doing electronic collation of voting and ballot results like what they do in US. We've not read that state. That is not in our law. So INEC is just mere viewing portal. And look, what are we talking about? I've challenged people. Let anybody come out and say the result that was declared at my poll unit was different from what was posted on our high portal. Nobody has been able to say that. And what are we saying again? All political parties, they have party agents at every poll unit, and party agents were given election results, including security agencies, the police, the civil defense, and what have you. Look, so if you are now saying, you see, let me say this again, you must marry your fact with the law. If there's a disconnect between your fact and the law, then you've done it wrong. You can't be entitled to judgment. And the next question, the reliefs are declaratory. They are declaratory. You can't get judgment by default. You are the one who must establish and prove that you are entitled based on your pleadings and the evidence have satisfied or have discharged the orders of proof for me to entitle me to getting a judgment, to have a judgment in my favor. And you talk about wage report. In the wage report, the only great innovation in that report was that, which they suggested, was that the owners to be on the umpire INEC to prove that the election they conducted was conducted in substantial compliance with the law, and that should not be unprofessional. And they look at it, they said, look, this thing cannot stand because it's like turning our evidence act on its head. Because he who has had must prove. INEC is not the one who approached the court that the election they conducted was not fair and fair. It is the party who are led practices and also alleged that the election was not conducted.
Well, it appears that we have issues through to Mr. Ojo, but I was going to ask, if you can hear me, if INEC doesn't also have that responsibility as well, to be called to question on what it commits to, ahead of the election, what it promised. I'll take that to Mr. Onyekpere while we wait for Mr. Ojo to return.
Oh, my colleague talked about those who are practicing. I think the difference, what I want to say is that there is a difference between simply doing technical work and understanding the engineering designs and drawings. I am discussing not just the status quo. I am discussing what will be good for Nigeria and not reaffirming what has not worked. So INEC, like he pointed out in the Ways report, has all the information. The lawyers usually say that electoral proceedings or electoral adjudication proceedings are sui generis. They're in a class of their own. So what's he talking about turning the law upside down? If they're in a class of their own, you must make special class of their own provisions for them. And that's why that recommendation was made. You remember who Ways is? Was former Chief Justice. He has sat over some of these cases before. So it's not just what Onyekpere talking. And he had a panel of other jurists and high-ranking people in society who worked with him to arrive at those recommendations. So if there was a mischief over close to 20 years ago, and here was a recommendation to say, let's use it to plug this mischief. Today, we didn't take up those recommendations. And that same mischief is still manifesting on a day-to-day basis. What do we do? That's why I'm saying, why don't we try out what that recommendation and see how it works?
Okay, we have to thank you for coming on. Eze Onyekpere is a legal practitioner and also the lead director, Center for Social Justice. We also had Mr. Adebayo Ojo, a senior advocate of Nigeria, former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Oyo State, also in the legal team of President Bola Tinubu. We will be back in a moment. Incidentally, we'll be talking about the president in India. Don't go away.
And I promise, just don't keep quiet. Don't procrastinate. Don't be frightened about investments in Nigeria. Bring it home. Ask your questions. Make your requests. The trade and investment opportunity is enormous. I have a team, and I am the captain of that team. I assure you, we solve problems.
All right, so Ajuri Ngalale joins us next. He's a special advisor to the president on media and publicity. Joining us from India, the president's trip. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, yes, the president is there on an investment drive. And I know that, yeah, there will always be questions from manufacturers here in terms of the investment climate, how they want it a lot better back home here. But give us an insight into how the president's trip is going on in India.
Thank you very much, Chamberlain. Good morning to you and good morning to the great people of Nigeria this morning. Let me just say that we have been quite pleased with the outcomes of the engagements of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu with Indian industrialists and investors. We have seen the cementing of major investments. And these are not merely MOUs to be written on a piece of paper only to later be unimplemented. This is a situation in which the president secured these investments and then went into individual closed-door meetings with each of these investors who have pledged these investments to ensure that the nitty-gritty kind of the nuances and the details are dealt with at the presidential level with his personal intervention, making sure that whether it has to do with the regulatory compliance, whether it has to do with tax incentives, whatever it is that will bring these industries, these factories, these facilities into Nigeria to create jobs for Nigerians and expand our taxpayer base in the country is what the president has done. And effectively what we have are in one event, $14 billion worth of new investments, about $8 billion coming from Indorama, which is already present as a petrochemical and fertilizer production facility in LMA local government area, Rivers State. They are investing $8 billion in a massive new expansion in country. In addition to that, we have a $3 billion investment in a new steel processing mill, a steel production mill, and iron ore processing facility that will be established by Mr. Naveen Jindal of Jindal Steel and Power Company Limited. That's something we're very excited about. And then in addition to that, we also have $1.6 billion being invested by Jitendra Sachdeva of Skipper Seal Power Company Limited, which is going to see to the establishment of 20 new power generation plants at 100 megawatts each, totaling about 2,000 megawatts across multiple states of northern Nigeria. So there is a ton for Nigerians to look forward to. And I haven't even gone through really, kind of 60% of the total investments. There are a lot of smaller ones, but I think also it's worth noting that on the security question in the country, Tinubu is securing a deal today, also in the presence of the National Security Advisor, Malam.
Oh, I think we lost that connection. Albeit I hope it's temporary, because we'd like to get a lot more from him about the president's trip in India. I'm not sure you can still hear me. Can you still hear me, Ajuri? Okay, so we'll get that connection back. And yes, indeed, several areas that he's mentioned there. The power sector, I know ears will tingle when you hear about the power sector. We all want this power sector, uninterrupted power supply at that. And so the Minister of Power needs to know that, of course, he knows his job is cut out for him and he needs to make himself available to Nigerians. So, Ajuri, let me just jump in. I lost you for a bit. I will make our time to have a lot more conversation on some of those other areas, because lots of people want to know, how will businesses, the SMEs, regular people key in and improve their economy personally. But let me ask you this. I mean, just before this trip, there was that meeting the president had with Oracle chiefs, and many thought, okay, so in that trajectory, probably, just probably. And then to India. We know India has this intellectual capital when it comes to IT infrastructure globally. Is there anything going on in that regard?
Oh, absolutely. A major part of the engagements here, in addition to some of the investments I laid out, totaling about $14 billion, is that we had signed three major, very, very important MOUs, memorandums of understanding, with the Indian government, particularly the Indian Ministry of Communications and Innovation. They've partnered with our Ministry of Innovation and Digital Economy to effectively create a shared ecosystem for ICT development with respect to the digital economy, kind of a digital economic transformation. They're going to partner with us very closely. It's well known that India's digital infrastructure is one of the world's best. It is one that is dealing with a scale of over 1 billion people. So we have a lot to learn. They have a very similar market to us. They have a very similar kind of socioeconomic dynamic to us. So we're excited for that partnership. And in addition to that, we have another MOU under the Ministry of Trade and Investment with the investment promotion arm of the Indian government, known as Invest India, that will deal with a kind of infrastructural development. In association with Nigeria's Infrastructure Corporation of Nigeria, they will be partnering with Invest India to essentially come together, mobilize resources for major infrastructural development opportunities across the digital space, but also across physical infrastructure, roads, bridges, airports, seaports, and the like in Nigeria. So that is totally separate from the individual investments that Mr. President was able to secure through his personal intervention here in New Delhi. And there's a lot more to come.
I know the president, even during campaign and then subsequently, he's spoken largely about how he wants to ensure that foreign businesses have at least a very safe, make Nigeria a safe haven for those kinds of investors. So for this particular trip, is there like a target in terms of what we want to achieve, what exactly we want to do, so that when we get to this threshold, we know, okay, well, we're moving forward, we're meeting some target, at least something to measure how we're progressing. Is there any such thing?
Absolutely. So aside from the government-to-government MOUs that we put in that are now in place, and aside from the investments I've mentioned, it's worth noting $14 billion in one summit is no small amount of money. And for us, this is just one nation that we're partnering with. How much more when the president's moving around the world, securing investments country by country with investors from each of these countries. The biggest thing that we campaigned on under the Renewed Hope campaign of His Excellency Mr. President during the campaign season was that you are electing a man who has done this before. In Lagos, he attracted industries, he attracted factories, he attracted businesses, foreign capital, because of his background as a businessman, because he understands where the shoe is pinching the foot of investors and business people. He's able to say, look, now the powers of state are in my hand. I am in a position to ensure that whatever encumbrances that you might have experienced in the past in Nigeria, I'm now in a position to totally remove them from the federal level in collaboration with the state governments. And so you no longer have a problem. I'm going to invite you. My door is going to continue to be open. And Nigeria is going to be a place that you're going to enjoy doing business in, not just because of our market size, but also because of the president has been actively selling our people. What I mean by that, he's selling the virtues of our people. He's saying Nigerians are genius. Nigerians are hardworking. Nigerians are naturally entrepreneurial in their nature. This is what he's telling investors, and they know it's true. So he's saying, look, it's one thing to deal with the fact that we have a large market. It's another thing entirely to know that you have this brilliant population of Nigerians, so many of us who are working hard, who are entrepreneurial in nature, who can contribute to these businesses. Earlier in the conversation, you were mentioning how MSMEs might be able to feed into some of these big investments that are coming. This is a major point. You will have MSMEs feeding in those inputs. For example, you have a glass production factory that's being established in Nigeria. It's going to be local MSMEs that are going to be providing the sand, for example, and that applies across multiple sectors, across multiple large investments. So our MSMEs are going to be kind of the feedstock input points for these large-scale industries that the president is bringing to bear. But what we are saying is $14 billion in one summit that is actually going to translate to coming in on the ground is no small feat. And we're saying that as we go around the world, you're going to be seeing much more of that. And we want to get into the trillions by the end of the first 4 years of this administration. That's our goal.
All right. So one more thing before you go. Last time, several times actually, but the last government signed several MOUs and agreements with different companies, and it was difficult for lots of people to actually understand how to feed in. There were questions about Chinese yuan and renminbi, for instance. How were we going to benefit? Several questions came through. People couldn't get answers. We didn't get answers. We didn't know how all of those were going to play out. But for purposes of at least enhancing a lot more trust, transparency, pulling Nigerians along so that they can take informed decisions about their businesses, they need to have information. So what is on ground to ensure that the MOUs that are signed, the details of that MOU, businesses, organizations know how to feed in so they can leverage and benefit on it? What's the thinking of this government about that?
The important issue that you raised, Chamberlain. And this is why for us, we have been very thorough and comprehensive in making sure that we carry our people along. Ultimately, we're doing this for them. We're doing this for Nigerians. We're not doing it for ourselves. We're not doing it for any special interest. We're doing it so that our people will have jobs, so that our people will have partnerships, so that our people will have, access to, that we'll have more revenues to be able to more effectively and efficiently provide public services to our people. That's what all of this is about. So for us, before we left, you would recall, not only did we do a world press conference on it, we went to programs telling people what to expect from the G20, that the president is there for business around the world. We've had reports from Bloomberg and Reuters, basically ensuring that when people see Nigeria at the G20, they know we're here seeking investment. That's what we're here for. Now that we're here and we've secured those investments, we very swiftly, on the same day, made sure that Nigerians knew exactly who the investors were, what is the scale of investment, what is their sector, what they want to do. And ultimately, when we come back and these investments are on the ground, we're going to be doing further sensitization. But it's very important what you've raised, the points you've raised, that people need to be carried along and they need to know how they can key in to directly benefit from the new investments that are coming. And I can assure you that maybe in the past, government communication had not been the best, but I can assure you that under the administration of Mr. President, and certainly in the sector I'm involved in, I will make sure that as far as I possibly can, Nigerians are carried along to be able to key into the opportunities available to them through these investments.
All right, I've exceeded the time here, but let me just chip in this one because I know I need to go. How did the president find time to, or did he keep tabs on the election tribunal? It took almost a whole day yesterday. So are they clicking glasses? Does he know that some parties are still very angry with how the judgments came through yesterday?
So the president is a multitasker. He got to this level being an effective multitasker. So what he actually did was he was monitoring the judgment live on TV from New Delhi. But what he did was he did not allow that to get in the way of his official schedule of activities. So he was still going into one-on-one meetings with these investors who have made these major, investment pledges, making sure he's ironing out the details with them, linking them directly with the right officials, ministers, and the like, to make sure their problems are sorted out. Then after the meetings, he'd look at the TV to see what's going on. And he was kind of doing that throughout the day until we got into the evening hours, and it was really time to get towards kind of the final bits of the judgment. Then we sat down as a team, all of us, around the room, and we monitored it with him until it was concluded. And then, of course, there was a minor celebration. He basically gave remarks to the media. And then after that, we all prayed for the country, a Muslim prayer and a Christian prayer for the country, and that to pray also that his administration it becomes the most successful in the history of the country for the sake of Nigeria and Nigerians. All right, thank you very much indeed. Ajurin Galale, Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity. Pleasure to be with you. Thank you. All right, here's a message from Professor Enahena, who says, after this judicial pronouncement, Nigerians must now become more vigilant than they have ever been, more resolute to defend our resources being misappropriated, and become common and unified against the forces or elements involved in deliberate impoverishment of the people, and unified against forces in government misappropriating the resources of the people. All right. So that is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We will see you again tomorrow. I am Chamberlain, so have a good day.
14 billion naira in investments and pledges made by investors from India. That's a lot. We hope that it translates into, physical work on the ground. We look forward to exploring that. And thank you for your mails. We'll take more tomorrow. And thank you for watching. I am Bukola Koka.
Think Nigeria. I'm Ayo Makide. Have a wonderful day.